Hey everyone, Andrew here. In this video I want to talk about what is a clear mix.
When it rains, it pours. Water's up to my chin.
Because a lot of times you'll get feedback on a mix, or you'll listen to your mix and you'll just think, this doesn't sound clear. Someone will say your mix is very muddy, or I can't hear what's going on. And it's hard to interpret that as what things you can actually do in your mix to make it better. And so in this video I want to just first jump in and say, what is a clear mix? So when I think of a clear mix, there's a couple things that I think of. There's first the balance of everything relative to each other, and that's just pretty much volume. Now that's one aspect. There's, I think, three total. There's kind of the relative volumes, and then there's the space, as I call it. And that's kind of like the panning. You know, when you listen to something, does it sound like it's on the left? Is it dead center? Is it on the right? Is it wide? Is it narrow? And then you also have the distance and time. You know, does something sound far away? Does it sound in your face? So you have this kind of two-dimensional field that you're playing with. And so, you know, that's volume and space. And then lastly, you also have frequency. So is something very low? Is it like a bass? Is it a sub? Is it a kick drum? Or is it a snare? Or is it a vocal? Or is it a guitar? You know, that's kind of the timbre characteristic of the sound of the instrument. So by putting all these things together, you have space, depth, you know, width, and then you have frequency, and then you have relative volume. And that combined really determines what your mix is, and the way you use these three elements really determines if your mix is clear or if it's a muddy mess. So to understand this, I think you really need to know about how a speaker can represent sound. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of how it actually works, just at a high-level overview. So in a speaker, you have something vibrating that pushes the air at a certain frequency. You know, you get varying degrees of higher pressure and lower pressure waves that move around and bounce around in the room to generate what we call sound. Now that speaker, you typically have two of them, right? So you have a left and a right channel, whether that be headphones or speakers. And by doing that, you can make something sound like it's left, you can make something sound right, but you can also make something sound like it's dead center. And how do you do that? Well, if you want something to sound like it's in the middle, all you do is you play it the exact same on both speakers. And if you want something to sound like it's not in this necessarily left or right or center, but it's like wide, what you do is you have almost the same sound, but very slightly different in both channels. And that'll make it sound like it's not center, because it's different in left and right. It's wide. Center, but wide. And if something's very narrow in center, that's really just that it's like a singular sound coming the same out of both speakers. Now, a speaker can't really resonate at the same frequency twice. So if you have the same note twice, you're just making the same sound louder. So that's why, you know, you're separating things in frequencies and space, because one singular speaker isn't gonna like output the same frequency like twice. It's just gonna make it twice as loud if it lines up exactly the same. There's other aspects to consider, like you have the speakers vibrating like all these different frequencies and at different amplitudes. It's more complicated when you look closely at it, but think about it like that. You know, you want to think of how your speakers making the sound and how two speakers work together to make your overall stereo field. So I have this A sound here.
Hey.
So it's just dead center. And now if I copy it, paste it, and just play it the same twice.
Hey.
Oops, sorry, that was panned right.
Hey.
Turn one off.
Hey. Hey.
It's just the same sound louder. So there's never any benefit to literally copying the exact same thing. Now if I move one right and move one left.
Hey. 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 Hey.
It doesn't change anything to pan one left and pan one right. So if you're going to have the exact same frequency and just like spread them, it doesn't do anything. It just makes it louder, and it's still dead center. It doesn't make it wide. The only thing that'll make something sound wide is if there's differences between the channels. So now if I have these pan left and right.
Hey. Hey.
Oh, I had this one turned off.
Hey. Hey.
So they're pan left and right. Let me get this left one. And if I throw an EQ on, and I don't know, I'll just cut around 1,000, and maybe I'll go to this clip, and I'll even add some like very slight detuning, and I'll turn on a warp mode, and I'll turn on Complex Pro and change the formants, I guess. I don't know if that does anything if I don't time stretch it. And then I'll go to this other one, and I'll bring off some of the very highs, and I'll scoop some of these upper mids, And now let's listen to how it sounds spread left and right.
Hey, 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 hey.
It sounds different, right? It's not necessarily center or wide, but it sounds different than just being twice as loud like it did before.
Hey, hey, hey.
Now if I go on one of these and I throw in like a saturator, and maybe I'll throw in like a reverb, just for fun. And then, let's go in this one, and let's detune it a little bit the other way. And I'll also throw in a reverb, but I'll make it like drastically different.
Hey, hey.
Now we're actually starting to get something that sounds wide in a way. Now, if I want to exacerbate this, I'll just stretch this one out a little bit.
Hey, hey.
And now they're a lot more different between the two channels. And it's less about a dead center thing. It's more of this wide sound. And even if I go ahead and turn off these reverbs, it'll still sound wide.
Hey, hey.
Compared to the dead center thing, which I'll copy and paste here for your convenience to hear the differences between what we started with and what we have now.
Hey, 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 hey.
So that tells the story of having the same sound, panning it around and trying to get wide to center versus like left and right. But if you want to think about how things are actually discerned in a real mix, I want to dive into this actual rough mix that I have going. So if I play this part, hopefully you'll agree that you can hear a clear like sub, you can hear bass, you can hear synths, and you can hear leads and all the different drum elements pretty clearly. They're mixed in a way that everything is present. Whether you like the mix or not, you should be able to agree that you can hear everything. And the way this is done is through the combination of the pan techniques, the volume techniques, and the frequency technique. So I'm going to illustrate the frequency technique here. Here I have two different bass sounds, which I'll solo so you can know what I'm actually playing. And here I really just wanted the sub aspect, but I did leave some harmonics in that those get washed away a little bit. But then I have what I call the bass, but it's not really very bassy. This is really here to sound like in a phone. If I put this song on Instagram, the phone speaker can actually like generate these frequencies. It can't generate the subharmonic. So this is kind of there to give more tone to the bass. Now next we have a good example of the pan techniques. Now if I look at this sub here, you'll see that on the very bottom I have these various scoops. This scoop here is where the bass lives, roughly. And this scoop here is where the lead instruments live. Even this bass lives there as well. Now, if you look at this other group, this is a group of two synthesizers that are pan hard left and hard right. This is actually dual tracks. I recorded the same thing twice. So you'll actually hear that it sounds like it's widespread. And this is in contrast to the basses, which are panned dead center. Well, sorry, the sub is panned dead center. This other bass is actually spread. I mean, since it's higher frequencies, it's spread around. So the sub is locked in, and these frequencies is wide. But if you look at what I did for the panning, the panning here is actually hard right and hard left, whereas the panning on this is just spread a certain amount of width. So it's different, and the frequencies and the tones are a little bit different. So if I solo these three things together, you can hear a bass, and you can hear that kind of like moving bass pattern. And you can hear them separately pretty nicely because they're separated in width, left and right panning, and they're also separated in frequencies a good amount. Also, they're different melodies, so they're actually separated in time and their actual like core frequency as well. Now next we add on this thing, which is probably blends in a little bit with this, with this thing. So if I solo these together, then I'll add on these basses. So that does get buried, but the purpose of this different sound is really just to add texture to these doubles. So in this case, it serves its purpose. It's fine that you don't hear that separate instance of that synth separately, because it's really just kind of enhancing the tone of this part as well. But it is separated in the mix. It is a dead center version of that wide part. So, you can hear it in the mix if you know it's there, but it is meant to be more of a sound enhancer than a separate part. Next, we get to this part, which I believe is the lead. And most of the frequency content lives between this 1 and 2K region here. And it is cut here, and it is cut in the lows, but you're not hearing much in this area anyways. Even if I did this, there's not much low end anyways. And in terms of how this is panned, it is dead center, but I have an auto panner on it, so it's constantly kind of going left and right. You can see here in the auto pan, I have it pretty harsh, so it's not like doing this. It's more going da 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 da. And then the echo is also a ping pong echo, so every time it echoes, it'll be like da 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 da. So the main sound is moving around like this, and the echoes are kind of bouncing between the two channels. Then we also have the EQ, which I talked about. So it's boosted in a different frequency, where if I look at all these other synths, I have that rough frequency band cut in all of them. And this, well, except for this one. And what that lets happen is it lets that lead stand out a good amount. Now, another way I have that lead stand out is every synth in the song except for the lead is sidechained to the kick drum. So when the kick hits, everything ducks down very quickly and comes back up, but that lead sound doesn't stop. Now I can show you what that sounds like if I put it in the sidechain, because it does sound pretty cool with it in there. But out, I thought it made it sound a little more clear. And there's a couple of other layers in here. So whereas the other lead is kind of moving around like this, these leads are not. So, well, they kind of are, but they're panned like not super wide, but they're panned like this, and they're double tracked. So they're kind of wide, but they're not all the way wide. And in terms of how they're EQ'd, they're similar to the leads, but they have like reverb and chorus and delay on it, so they sound a lot further in time away. Whereas the other lead is kind of in your face. It's just pretty much delay. There's not much reverb or any reverb. And then this is like a wide-ish pair that is heavily affected in time because of the reverb. The reverb really makes it sound far away. So this lead is here, and this pair of leads is back here. And then we have synths that are like this, and we have synths that are like this, and we have synths that are like this. And then the drums are like a whole other story, but the same process is applied just like this. So anyways, hope this video wasn't too much of a disaster in terms of explaining it. I wish I was a good illustrator or drawer, because it would be a nice way to show things versus explaining them and showing them in the actual DAW. But if you have any questions, please leave me a comment below. Make sure to subscribe because I upload videos 2 times a week. And like this video if you enjoyed it. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.